Rob Crabbe is a producer and writer of The Late Late Show with James Corden, who joins me today to look back at the last year of highlights from the show. I'm Rob Licuria, senior editor at Gold Derby. And Rob, the show recently switched to remote production, obviously, when the pandemic shut productions down across the country, like pretty much all of the other variety shows at the moment.
Yes.
How long is it going to take, do you think, until we get back to normal?
Oh, I think it'll be quite a while before we get back to any sense of like what we consider normal. It'll take a vaccine before I think anybody's comfortable having big audiences together. And so, I'll leave that to the doctors and scientists. But I wouldn't guess any time before spring of next year will we be looking at any semblance of what we all consider normal.
And you've been quoted as saying that remote production is obviously not sustainable forever, because you are obviously yearning to go back to the way things were in a studio with your colleagues and staff and audience. So apart from those obvious reasons, why is remote production so challenging?
Well, it's technically very challenging. And then, as you alluded to, it's the human side of it, which is being around your coworkers, being around your friends, me being able to walk into James's office and talk through something. There's an efficiency in it that you don't have when you're shooting remotely. Then take into account all of the technical sides of how you get the footage to an editor who's working in their house to be able to cut the footage down to turn the show around. And we have tiny windows and margins on these shows. We shoot them in the evening and they air later that night. And then for our show particularly, we're about scope and scale. We are singing in crosswalks with 45 dancers between red lights on Beverly and Genesee. We're doing soundtracks to a love story on 13 sets inside of our studio. We like a lot of big, ambitious pieces, and those have all gone away as well. And so you really have to recalibrate your brain on how you approach the show. And so I'd love to be able to get back to doing those big set pieces, but first and foremost, everybody needs to stay safe. We need to keep everybody healthy, and we don't want to be responsible and would not be able to live with ourselves if we put anybody in harm's way. So we will make do this way, and we'll try and turn out the best shows that we possibly can during this time.
Like, credit to you and the team that apart from that very organic audience dynamic, a lot of the comedy and the spontaneity is still there, and it's still a really enjoyable show to sit through and be immersed in. I think actually the show adapted really agilely to the pandemic with, for example, Homefest, which was such a great antidote to when the pandemic first really hit everybody. I mean, obviously we're still going, but back then it felt more urgent as a crisis before this malaise and complacency set in. And Homefest came out at just the right time. And I remember watching it and watching some of those great intimate moments with like Dua Lipa and Billie Eilish, just to name two. What was the biggest challenge of getting that off the ground at the time?
Well, we were learning how to do it as we did it. And so I think that, it's strange to look back on it now because we're so many months into this, but that was within the first 2 weeks of these stay-at-home orders in America and around the world. And for the first time, globally, everybody was in it together. And so our goal, what we wanted to do at the time was illustrate the fact that we're all apart, but we're in it together. And so phrases like that you've heard a lot more of in the last 3.5, 4 months, but that was on the very early side of it. And so we needed to show the international scale. And so what we wanted to do, rather than try and fabricate something on an iPhone in James's backyard, we wanted to try and put on a show in prime time that gave more of a sort of worldview. And so you had Andrea Bocelli in Italy, BTS boys in South Korea, Dua Lipa in London, Ben Platt in New York, us in Los Angeles, and try and capture as much of the fact that everybody was staying at home, why it was so important at that time to be staying at home. Granted, now there has been lifts of the restrictions and the malaise that you mentioned, but we wanted to really hammer home why everybody needed to be home at that point. And we wanted to try and bring a little bit of joy and levity and positivity to a grim situation.
I'm really glad you mentioned that, because I actually forgot about why it resonated with me. Of course, it was funny and it was really fun to be part of, but it was that international element. It felt like it felt like the world was much smaller for that period of time that the show was airing. And I mean, logistically, it looked like a complete nightmare to get done properly, but it happened, and you should be very proud of what you guys achieved. Was it a bit of a sigh of relief when it was all over?
I mean, it was everything was such a scramble leading up to it, trying to turn it around, trying to get it on air. So I don't know that there's been much time for reflection. Proud of the show that we made, but just trying to figure out how to shoot it, the technology of it, creating camera rigs so that the artists could use this sanitized camera to shoot themselves. Then we picked up with gloves and a mask to take back to an edit facility. There's just so many components to it, and thankfully there's so many artists that wanted to be involved and performers that wanted to be involved in it. Then it was just the time differences. When you're trying to map out South Korea, Italy, London, LA, New York, and trying to make as close to live show as you could, that part was very hard as well.
Yeah, it's always
but I'm happy it was well received, and I'm happy that we had the opportunity to do it.
Just speaking of the show more generally, it helps that James is much more of a showman in terms of his ability as a singer and performer than a lot of other hosts of similar variety shows. So like there's the specials, the crosswalk musicals, the Carpool, the Tony Awards. There's so many things that he does, and there's so many things that you guys do. I sometimes think, like, how exhausting. I can't imagine you have any time to sleep or eat, but does that versatility make it an easier proposition as a producer and writer to keep the show fresh?
Yes, I think so. I think that James is an incredible talent. And so for my partner, Ben, and I, in putting the show together, he's, to borrow an American term, he's a 5-tool player, which is an American reference to baseball, but he does a little bit of everything. And so the fact that we can constantly sort of feed that fire and give him ways to perform and come up with different ways for him to sort of scratch all those itches, use all those muscles, is very freeing for the writing staff and the producing staff, because you have somebody who's wholly committed and has the talent to pull it off.
Yeah.
And so we're always trying to think of new ways to use him.
The key is also that it's not just a talk show. It's really a variety show in the real sense of that word, literally, and also what we expect from the genre. To me, it feels more of an old school variety show. And there's a lot of really unexpected elements to me, that's the appeal. Every night that I watch, I think, what on earth are we going to be given today? Is that intentional? Is that something that you're always thinking about, keeping it really unexpected?
Yes, I mean, we love nothing more than a comedy segment that's written to go awry. Even now in these home shows where James is operating from his garage, I didn't know the word Zoom 4 months ago, and now everything we do is Zoom related. And our writers have had to come up with all sorts of sort of Zoom-based comedy, and so. James in a Zoom meeting finding out that the writers and all the staff have been having game nights that he's not invited to, and then gets into a rage in his garage on Zoom, like those little left turns where you're not quite sure where the bit's going. We love doing those, and he's excellent at performing them. And so we find ways even in this environment to try and do that. And then within the studio, when we can actually be doing our big production pieces, of course, it's wonderful to have a performer like that you get to utilize. And so we don't want to ever be doing talk, band, good night. We love the idea of putting some scope and scale into the shows. And I appreciate you calling it a variety show, because that's all we've ever wanted to make was a variety show. Something where you can sort of, it's late night television. You need to respect the format. You need to, there's a reason it stayed pretty much a single format since the early 60s, but you want to be playful within it. And so we try and be as playful as possible within that format.
Yeah, like no disrespect to the talk part of the show, because that's great. But for me, it's not about that at all. Like, that's just secondary for me. Everybody's different. The other thing that I really appreciate about Corden and Late Late is that although he dips his toe into political comedy, it's not really about that. It seems like it's like almost a respite from the relentless barrage of this exhausting 24-hour news cycle and political circus. Has that always been one of the keys to this show's success?
Um, Maybe. I think that part of it is that if for regular viewers of the show, you'd never be left wondering where James leans politically.
Yeah.
It's very clear in the monologue. However, we follow a brilliant political comedian in Stephen Colbert who does a full hour that is excellent on political comedy. And so the viewer's seen it. So therefore, we want to be a different show. And so we can kind of lean more into the fun variety elements of it. And I think that, like, you know, James is a big part of the show's success is the fact that it's shareable, that people are looking at YouTube clips, sending it to their friends, watching it on Facebook. The fact that we have, I don't know how many billions of views now and 25 million subscribers on YouTube, all these sort of statistics that lean towards the fact that that's a true version of a rating for us. We can see what's resonating with people. You have to actively go find it on YouTube and click it, or someone has to send you the link and you have to open it up. You have to choose to watch it. And so that's heartening to us as producers and writers, the fact that you can get in real time a sense of what people are watching. And the things that people tend to enjoy with our show are the pomp and circumstance. We just did a piece Thursday night with the Muppets, where they sang Little Help from My Friends with all the Muppets and the Mayhem Band and stuff. And that was a great little 3.5-minute pop of joy that got circulated all over the place. And so I think it's a big part of our success.
Yeah, there's so many moments from the various shows and specials that have gone viral. We can't really use that terminology anymore, but you know what I mean. Is the team conscious of what might be the next thing that will explode across the globe, or are you constantly surprised about what sticks and what maybe doesn't stick?
I don't know that we're surprised. There's certain things that we know are going to be effective. Paul McCartney Carpool Karaoke, people are going to check it out. Occasionally stuff will go that we didn't necessarily think would get the traction or the legs that we anticipated, but we're not really programming for television and we're not really programming for the internet. We're just trying to make good stuff. Yeah. And so if it's good, people are going to pick up on it and watch it. And so, you know, I've always said, like, we always talk about the fact that if it's good enough to air at 12:37 a.m., it's good enough to watch at your computer at lunchtime at 12:37 p.m. And so our hope is just to make the best possible product, and then people will find it. And James we have such an international audience. We're on in 155 countries. And so they're not concerned by what time you come on CBS on broadcast television in America. They just want to see the best bits. And so it allows the show to travel.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about some highlights from the last season. For example, the Christmas special was a good one, and that had a great bit called Boys to Menorah. I really enjoyed that. And also the Hillary Clinton and Chelsea Clinton episode from November in 2019 probably had its challenges, but it seemed to work really well. What could you say about those two particular highlights?
Well, the Christmas special was incredibly fun to make because we decided just to pack it full of entertainment. And there was Boys to Menorah was in there. I believe Billie Eilish Carpool was in there.
Yeah.
We had a bit where Santa Claus went crazy at James and destroyed a set. There was just every bit of it was a piece of production. And so those are fun for the team to sink their teeth into. And I know I'm forgetting good things that were in there. I wish I had the format in front of me. But there's a lot of, like, we just packed that one to the gills. And and we have Mariah Carey closing it out with the Song of Christmas.
Yeah, you can't lose.
And so it was just a very gratifying show to make because I felt like it illustrated all the things that we do best. And we knew we were going, you know, the staff and crew are kind of chomping at the bit on that last night before you head off to the holidays. And so it's a bit of a relief valve getting to shoot a big show like that. Hillary and Chelsea Clinton, we were unbelievably honored that they want to do the show together, and the fact that they were up to be playful. We did a little sort of like who knows each other better game with the two of them, where James would ask a question and they had to hold up whether it was Hillary or Chelsea. And that was the bit of fun that I think that they let their guard down for, that they were open to, because hopefully they feel comfortable with James. And I think it's a compliment to him and his personality that someone like Hillary Clinton and Chelsea Clinton would come on and just have a good time. And so it's really great for all of us to see them in our studio on our couch. It's just any of those little moments where a figure like that comes in, you just feel that much more gratified. When Michelle Obama wanted to do something fun last year and we set up a Team USA versus UK dodgeball game, like those are sort of like moments that you never anticipate. And I imagine a 10-year-old James Corden would be shocked that he gets to do now. And so we love seeing stuff like that and people coming to us wanting to have fun.
Yeah, and I think to me, the absolute highlight of all of the stuff that you guys put together is Carpool Karaoke, and it's really taken off. Everybody has a favorite. To be honest, in my family, it's the Lady Gaga one. We still, to this very day, sing Move Bitch, Get Out the Way, exactly like she did in the car. And I'm wondering, do you have a favorite? I'm thinking it's probably Paul McCartney, so you can. I'm sure that's one of the favorites. It's one of the best ones you guys have done. But do you have a personal favorite that you really enjoyed, just as a viewer?
Well, I think you said Lady Gaga. You cut out a little bit, right?
Yes,
Okay.
Lady Gaga.
Obviously, I don't know. I'm proud and pleased with all of them, but actually, for me, it might be Stevie Wonder. I thought that there was an incredible amount of joy and general loveliness in that. And there's a really sweet moment when Stevie called up James's wife and said, "I just called to say I love you." That like I was in that edit, probably watched that thing 75 times, and it got me each and every time. And so, and it was also that one as a show sort of helped us turn a corner with Carpool Karaoke, because once Stevie Wonder is doing it, it becomes harder to say no to. Because if Stevie Wonder does it, why wouldn't you want to do it? Because he's somebody that all musicians look up to.
It's incredible how something so simple, a camera in a car with James singing, by the way, always singing beautifully and knows all the lyrics, like incredible performer with people that we admire, has really taken off. It's such a simple idea.
Yeah. He has to work hard to remember all those lyrics. That is,
okay. It doesn't just come naturally. Okay.
Well, everybody thinks, because I fall for it all the time with him, is I think that, well, I know the lyrics to those songs. And he's like, you know the chorus to those songs. You try the third verse. So it is quite a lot of memorization.
Yeah, I can imagine. You know, the show is lighter and more irreverent than a lot of other more political talk shows that we see, but sometimes the show does cause a little bit of controversy. There was some noise about James's response to Bill Maher's fat shaming that got the show some unusual attention. Not in a bad way, but it at least showed James kind of taking a stand about something that really meant something to him. What were your thoughts on that particular episode?
I appreciated his passion to talk about it. And I think that when something, that's one of the things of being a host of one of these shows, is that if something catches the attention and feels it needs to be addressed, then he has the opportunity and sometimes the obligation to address them. And so I was really happy with that piece and the fact that we talked about it a couple times, and that show aired on a Friday night, the Bill Maher, where we talked about it. And I don't think that we talked about it on our show till maybe Wednesday of that week. And it's because it's not something you want to rush out. You want to take a breath. You want to think about it. You want to make sure you're addressing it in the right way. And I think that James addressed it in the right way. And I was proud of the show and proud of him for doing it.
And finally, we've received thousands of Emmy nominations, it feels like, for your work on Lately. And so far, I think you've won 5. The first 2 Carpool Karaoke specials, the interactive program, Next James Corden, and the Paul McCartney one. Do you have a favourite Emmy so far? Is there one that you like more than the others?
Oh, interesting.
So,
No, I genuinely find it thrilling every single time. I'm hopeful each year that we'll be fortunate enough to get nominated some way or another. Then the fact when they've read our names out those 5 times, I can remember the feeling each and every time. I find it all thrilling. So I hope that the good fortune continues. I wish I could say I had a favorite. I mean, the first one is, the first shock, but each time has been gratifying and fortunate, and we're thrilled that the voters have been kind to us thus far.
I can imagine. If it was me, I'd be like, and now I want another one, and let's go for another one. It's like an addiction. It's a great thrill. Rob, thank you so much for your time today. It's been really interesting listening to your insights on the show, and good luck for the upcoming few months of shows.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Everybody go to Gold Derby, make your predictions, click subscribe, and watch all of our great contender chats, just like this one with Rob.